One of our first missions was against Blackhammer. It was one of the targets that had 800 to 1,000 anti-aircraft guns. I'll tell you, there were tens of thousands of visible explosions. As a matter of fact, I truly felt blessed all the time I was in B-17s. I was born July 30th, 1921, Frederick, Oklahoma. We came to California. My father had come out here a couple of times before on business. And in 1932, I think it was, we came here to stay. I had been interested in airplanes for several years. From age 14, I guess. And my father had taken me out to Burbank to see some of the new airplanes out there. There were some B-26s, propeller-driven, of course, that were our first fighter planes since World War I. They had a pretty good reputation at that time. We thought very highly of Roosevelt. He was not only a great statesman, he was also a wise politician. I believe they didn't suspect the kind of chancellor that Germany had. In his early reign, he did some terrible things, and the more we heard about that, then the more we knew that Europe was in trouble. Roosevelt was very shrewd in not letting us get into a fight like that. They were afraid we were going to get in it. The picture was pretty dark.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
We'll get rid of that Japanese Navy and make them pay for it. A couple of days later, the Germans declared war on the United States. One thing that I recall quite well is that I called all the young men on my block to sit on the porch and talk about it. And I said, now what's it going to be? Army, Navy, or Marine Corps? And all of them joined. One had already been in the Navy. Never survived, but, and I don't know about the others. But I think every service was represented by the kids on my block. I joined what they call the Army Air Corps Reserve Group, which was actually a means of ensuring that we weren't drafted into some other service. So we were free of the draft from late in, I guess, December of 42 up to, I think, February 14th, 43. when I got the call to report to Santa Ana Air Force Base in Southern California. For the primary flight training, we went out on the desert in Arizona, north of Phoenix. We spent another 6 weeks flying the standard biplane, very good at aerobatics. And it was one of the best primary trainers that we had, not only because it was easy to fly, the aerobatics, which I loved, did slow rolls, snap rolls, spins, upside down, whatever. And to me, that was a lot of fun. We went from there to Minter Field, Southern California. That was for basic training. We were in the back seat, two-seat basic trainer, larger airplane, single engine, about 250 horsepower. Also reasonably good at acrobatics, but not as easy to handle. But we went to a transition course at the Roswell Airport in Roswell, New Mexico. It was a little difficult at first on the heavy airplanes. That's when we went into B-17s. The early B-17, which was not called a Flying Fortress at that time, but they began to make a number of changes in it. And we trained on B-17F, not necessarily a great plane, but solid. And of course, I had never flown in a four-engine airplane before, nor one that big, but this was the real McCoy. This was the transition from these little box kites, which I called them, with the twin engine, up to big heavy four-engine airplane that's built for a real purpose. At the graduation from advanced training, we were promoted to second lieutenant. And that was a glorious day. I had my wife there, and she was able to pin the bars on. We took off about 2 o'clock one morning from the Kearney, Nebraska Air Force Base. And I was issued a brand new B-17G model. Believe me, it flew like a baby carriage. It was easy to fly, and I had never flown a brand new B-17 before in my life. But I know that this was a great deal different from the war-weary planes that we had been flying, headed northeast toward Grenier, New Hampshire. Within an hour, I got into some clouds, and I had no idea that there was a big storm there. First thing you know, that airplane bounced around and rattled, and I could hear things in the plane rattling around. Fortunately, I remembered some of the guiding that my instructor gave me. Basically, don't try to keep the same level, but let it go up and down a little bit, but don't get too close to the ground. I kept it up at about the 10,000 level, and I fought that thing in quite a while, it seemed. Once I asked my co-pilot if he could take over for me for a couple of minutes. No, Charlie, I can't do it. I'm so dizzy, I'm about to get sick. So, all right, you stay there. And finally, I came out of the storm, and I realized that was my first real wartime problem. I was fighting a small war in that airplane. I left New Hampshire to go to Newfoundland, a place called Gander, which is of course right on the coast. I figured it would be about 200 miles from New Hampshire. After a day there, we took off and we were on the way to the Azores, which is about 400 miles due west of Portugal. We took off, headed toward Africa, and go directly to Marrakesh. After a day or two in Marrakesh, we flew up to Tunis, picked up some orders there, flew east from that point, on up to Gioia, Italy. We found the place that was going to be our home for the next few months, the 840th Bomb Squadron. Well, my first couple of missions began after we'd been there about 2 days, somewhere in Austria, I believe. Looking at the squadrons and the groups further ahead of us, I could see a couple of B-17s spinning out, coming apart, and lots of anti-aircraft explosions. And our biggest problem was anti-aircraft weapons. There were targets that had as many as 800 to 1,000 German 88 millimeter anti-aircraft guns. Each one of them could fire very rapidly, so we had to put up with that. Our support groups, fighter planes, some of my friends were in them, both in the P-51s and in the P-38s. The P-38 group won on one occasion following us. They found a German squadron above the cloud. Of course, they were preparing to go down through. The P-38s attacked the German Focke-Wulf squadron, scattered them. They went back to their own aerodrome in Germany. And I only saw one Focke-Wulf diving through our immediate formation. Diving from upper right to the lower left. After hitting the target, I think it was a refinery. We turned around and went back to our home base. I truly felt blessed all the time I was in B-17s. At the point where I would tell people I had an angel sitting on my shoulder. And I kind of think I did. Yes, on one mission, we had a tremendous amount of flak, which is what they call the anti-aircraft particles. It sounded very much like you're in a small tin building with a tin roof in the middle of a real hailstorm. I think it was after that mission that I got the flight engineer to count the holes in the airplane, and I had 400 holes in my airplane, and not one of the pieces of flak hit a person. I was very concerned about my crew, but none of them was hit. We had one airplane that had 3,100 holes in it. One individual was so badly wounded that he couldn't bail out, and his buddy, the other waist gunner, threw his parachute out the window. And he told the man that was so badly wounded, he says, "If you can't jump, I won't either. I'll stay here with you." The offer by the pilot to have them jump out was not accepted. Every man said, "I'll stick with it because so-and-so can't bail out. If we just have an empty airplane, it'll go down surely because it was so terribly disabled. Every man on that airplane later was awarded the Silver Star, which is a very high award. I would have been very proud to have worn one. We went to Naples to catch what was originally a very nice ship, and it took us about 5 days from Naples to get back to Pennsylvania. I took the troop train back to Southern California. We met at the terminal by the rest of the family, who claimed to be very happy that I got back. The war ended in Europe on the 3rd day of May, while I was still in Naples, waiting for the ship. The fighting had stopped a couple of days before, and I got in on the last of the fighting. But May 8th was when they signed the surrender. My thoughts are and were that this is a war we've got to join and we've got to win, with no questions about it. And there were very few people in the country at that time that disagreed. But that war had to be fought. It had its losses. A lot of people dead, a lot of people hurt. But I felt very lucky that we got through with the few losses we did have. It was a terrible war. It, of course, was not the war to end wars, which they thought World War I would be. It didn't work out so well, and World War II didn't end all wars. But it certainly woke people up to recognize that there is such a thing as democracy. There is such a thing as freedom. And they like it, those who are able to do so.